Often people don't know what to write when they're responding to any kind of literature question, like Macbeth, Inspector calls Jekyll, or the conflict poetry. Those are the ones that are most commonly combined. Now, a conclusion is not a summary, so really important. You're not summarizing the plots. You will know if you're doing this because you'll read it through and you go, yeah, I've just told the story. That is not what you want to do. You want to evaluate what the writer has done, and you want to pass judgments, which means you are probably going to need to be critical. Now, the writer, all of the writers who are writing our texts here, who are they? You've got Shakespeare. He's writing Macbeth. You've got Stevenson. He's writing Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. You've got Priestley, who's writing An Inspector Calls. And then you've got these male poets, and actually some female poets, who are reflecting on war. So a selection of poets. There are about, in our case, 15 of them. And they're snippets of journeys. Now, all of these people are writing about the same type of problem, which is why my apple is here. We've said before, for example, Shakespeare's core message about Macbeth as a leader is that he fools everyone. It is a trick. It is a facade. So in this sense, facade, a trick, you can say a deception. To move my apple. And the problem with it is it's deliberate. Now, Shakespeare shows how Macbeth, he chooses this path. It is an active, conscious choice. It's not like he's going, oh, I might or I might not. He's completely sold to it. It's 100% a lie. And yet, society of the time revere him. So society, if I pop society in the corner here, and you've got different societies of the time, don't worry if you can't remember the names of them. You've got Victorian, Edwardian. You don't need to, how many marks do you get if you just add that? None really, because what you really want is you want to reflect on the society of the time and how it influences our characters, how it morphs them. So society of the time, it's almost as if people are willfully blind. Think about Mrs. Burling. Is it really, do you think it's true that she simply did not know? Remember, she tells Eric, I did not know. But everyone else, when they all say, oh, Eric drinks too much, she goes, well, I never, but they all scoff and say, well, it's common knowledge. So willful blindness is very dangerous. It's a lot like when you choose to be ignorant. Now, ignorance can be learned, but ignorance is a really great comfort zone. And again, you've got this comfort zone. People don't want to know. And I think, I'm sure I read somewhere the other day that one of the most dangerous places you can exist is in your comfort zone. Because what you can 100% guarantee is you're not challenging the thoughts around you. Your comfort is deluding you into think that you can stop growing, you can pause, you can stop questioning. And of course, to stop is never wise, especially in our fluid society today, where we're so much is bombarded at us. We really need to be continually evaluative. We need to check. what we're being fed. So for Macbeth, really clear. It's black and deep desires. And I think black is just, you can't argue. There's no shade when it comes to black. You don't get mostly black. Black is one color. And what that reminds us of is my lovely apple. Let me draw my apple here. It's rotten. And what we've said before is if you take a rotten piece of fruit and you put it at the bottom of a fruit bowl and you cover it with healthy fruit, what happens to the rest of the fruit? The answer is the rot just spreads, and it's a silent spreading. And again, I love this idea of, quite simply, silence, because it's true. The most dangerous things in the world often grow in the dark. And this facade business, this idea of having a mask or being duplicitous, use any of those words you want. The point is you're lying, and you know you're lying. All of these men are aware, and that's the problem with them. They're aware. So each of these authors might be 100 or 200 years apart, but all of these authors are writing about archetypes, typical characters who are aware of what they're doing. They know the consequence and they choose it anyway. It's the worst kind of defiance because it's not you who's getting hurt. It's all the people around you who are getting hurt. And that comfort zone, that's dangerous. So Stevenson, for example, that's with Jekyll and Hyde. You've got the same thing, except facade is called duplicity, or things being duplicitous. I think in Jekyll's case, what's shocking, considering how many murders he commits, how much blood is on his hands, there is no repentance. I mean, technically none of the men repent, but I think considering how many men Stevenson murdered with his own hands, not Stevenson, Jekyll, that is interesting, because none of these men want to be saved from their choices. They like the choices they've made. They're upset that they've been caught. And that's very different from realizing the choice is wrong. So there is a very, very, should we say, a skewed moral compass. Or you can simply say the moral compass is not there. There's an absent moral compass. Or you can say that it is a bankrupt moral compass, which is a phrase you may well have heard before. Certainly, Mr. Priestley, you could easily describe the archetype of Mr. Burling as a bankrupt moral compass because his entire drive is money. So that makes sense. Again, here, of all the people who should give Ava Smith sympathy, Mr. Burling is our top scorer because the very first page of the novel, of the play, it says he has a provincial accent. So he comes from the country. He comes from the same place Ava Smith does. And what is shocking is that he's either running from it because he's afraid to return to that place, or he's living in denial that he's ever been there because it looks bad for his reputation. So again, these men are very blinkered. Now I know that in Jekyll and Hyde, obviously many people were murdered, but I'm wondering if, considering there are hundreds and hundreds of Ava Smiths and hundreds of people working in Mr. Burling's factory, I'm wondering if the amount of deaths is the same. Because what's interesting is, yes, Mr. Burling didn't use his hand, but he may as well have. Because by denying people the chance to actually survive, you are complicit. So I think the denial, remember when, I think the quote where Mr. Burling simply says, I refused. I think this is the dangerous thing, where they just refuse. I mean, that's admission of guilt. He's well aware. He just goes, he refused. Now, technically, you can split Mr. Burling into two types of character. Either he is a hard-headed businessman who is actually prioritizing his business. And then, of course, you do have to think about your profit margins and all that sort of thing. But as a father figure, the message is entirely different. He is cruel, vicious, and I think there, when Eric is put alongside his father, and the reader compares them, and when Mr. Burling's fatherly nature is reflected of Eric, then you realize what a cold house it is to live in. All of these men are very cold. Now, what we're doing here, I'm gonna come back to the poets a bit later. When we're thinking about how to write a conclusion, we're thinking about what the authors are trying to teach the audience, what they're trying to warn the audience about, what they're trying to expose about the society, what they're trying to threaten. Threaten's a good one for people like Mr. Burling, because the men in the audience watching the play will easily be highly paranoid about whether their phone will ring next, because the likelihood is Mr. Burling is simply a reflection on all the men in that echelon of society, in that section, who all dismiss the poor and who treat the hundreds and hundreds of Ava Smiths poorly. So these men who write these stories, they're upset, they're angry, they're fed up with being ignored, and so they write texts that expose, threaten, warn, teach, highlight. You can pick anything here. You can pick a selection. And if you're not sure, you can simply begin with perhaps. Perhaps the author is teaching us that facades don't work, because ultimately, as the truth arrives and the facade crumbles, the hurt that you leave behind is just unforgivable. And people might have been fooled in the present, but in the future they will not be fooled again. And perhaps that's the best message. So now we're going to zoom out briefly to this apple. And again, you're thinking, why are we looking at an apple here? Oh, hold on, sweetie. It comes right back to the Garden of Eden, and we're thinking about the snake. This is temptation, right? It's temptation. These men are tempted by different things, and they are not strong enough to resist the temptation. The problem with that is that all of the characters here, Macbeth, Jekyll, Mr. Burling, at the start of the plays, each of those men is at the pinnacle of success, which means that we meet men who are completely black. They're completely corrupt. So Mr. Burling, for example, the fact that he's got those long sentences, do you remember them? He never keeps quiet once he starts talking. So he's highly dominant verbally. He makes a lot of noise as a human being. Jekyll, the first page when they describe Hyde, because the questions about Jekyll, you have to talk about Hyde because they're the same. It's basically like Satan. In fact, the color black is also used repeatedly in Jekyll and Hyde's story. What's shocking is that if we come back over here, all of our men, be it, it's like Macbeth can be that one, Jekyll can be our, actually let's do Jekyll in the shape of Hyde here, with his walking stick, and color him in black, keep it nice and straightforward. And then Mr. Burling with big shoes because he's got a lot of power. He's also got a top hat, but I want to give him some angry eyes. All right. All of our men. Chapter 1 equals the pinnacle of their success. This just means, if you think of a mountain, yeah? Here is a mountain. That is the pinnacle. They're at the top. Which means when our stories begin, we meet them at the height of their power. And then what each author does, each author unravels them. Let's just, whoopsie. Action. What each author does, and bear in mind, these authors don't know each other, right? They unravel the power. The power disintegrates. You can say evaporates. You can say corrodes, dissolves. I just like dissolves. Does that have 2 S's? Oh no. Okay. When you're done, you can look that up. I've gone blank. I can't remember. Right. So here, what's important is all of these authors do this to their characters, their main characters, the men who these are all icons. They're all literally icons of their time. They are the men to be emulated. They are admired. And by the end of the play, they are crushed. And that is very, very deliberate. And that's your conclusion. When you are writing, if I zoom it all the way out now, you're thinking about the apple. You're thinking about how each of these men have failed at being good humans. The moral compass, for whatever reason, is not there. You can say it's temptation. For me, they're incredibly weak men. Even though in the beginning of each story, they are portrayed as extremely strong. I think behind closed doors, the picture is very, very different. You would be writing 3 sentences. So let's do one. Let's do one about Macbeth. I'm going to pick him. There you go. There's my guy with the crown. I would say, if I was going to evaluate the archetype of Macbeth, I would say Shakespeare portrays Macbeth as an incredibly weak or fallible man behind closed doors. What is shocking about Macbeth is how little resistance he puts up when it comes to his wife and the witches. The irony being that in chapter 1 he's seen as brave and described as an eagle and a lion. Shakespeare destroys him completely, morally, physically, psychologically, to the point where he loses everything. What is sad, though, is he could have had everything if Macbeth simply had made peace with his desires and followed the moral code, which is technically a good code. It's a safe code. He could have lived his life in those golden opinions with his partner of all greatness. Those 2 things are golden in terms of achievement, and they're probably better than a crown or a trophy. Yet Macbeth's greed means that he throws it all away. And it's a deliberate choice. So it's a warning. It's a warning to check on your leaders. It's a warning to evaluate them and make sure you're not just simply buying the rhetoric, because everyone has a duty to check their own temptation, especially men in power who are admired by others, who set a path for everyone else. Right. Okay.